there are a few students who are very new and beginners, so they are not aware about post-colonialism. So just for them, I'm going to explain this post-colonial theory through a story. So that will be very interesting, and it will be very exciting for you, and you can remember this term for a longer time. The story starts like I was living in my own flat in New Delhi. One day, a man from West Bengal came and asked for a rent. Although I was having only one room, I was living in 1 BHK, so there was only one room. I was not unable to give him on rent, but he requested, and that is the reason I gave my room on rent. The day he shifted in my room, initially he was sleeping on the floor, but after a few days, he asked for sharing my bed. So slowly, we mingled together. Both of us were having different culture. He was used to eat fish and rice all the time. But my diet was completely different from him. The God which he used to worship was quite different from my God. So none of our cultural etiquettes were meeting. All the times he used to talk in Bengali, although I never understand. But slowly, I got used to understand those languages. Now, the day has passed, so many days passed, and the entire situation of my room has changed. Even he had changed the place of the bed according to Vastu Shastra. He was fond of Vastu Shastra, so according to that, he changed the position of the bed. Everything in my house was changed. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I sometimes I forgot my own culture, and the new culture which was emerged was a mixture of my culture and his culture. And in Poco theory, this culture is called hybrid culture, which is not my own, not his. So in this story, I am the one who is colonized, and the person who has come to live with me on rent is a colonizer. So now you got the term who is colonizer and who is colonized. When a man is colonized, his culture is getting changed. A new culture which is being created is called hybrid culture. Although this term has come from horticulture, means producing a new type of plant using two different plants, but Homi Bhabha, who is an Indian post-colonial critic, has used the term in literary criticism in the Poco theory. So now you have got the clear understanding of the term hybrid culture. Okay. Now we got used to follow. I got used to follow his culture, means a new type of culture. One day I asked him to go back because I was got fed up of his attitude. So although he has taught me so many new things, जो चीजें मुझे नहीं आती थी, I got to learn from him. तो कभी कभी मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आता था कि इसको भगाया जाए या इसकी तारीफ की जाए. So this is like a puzzling type of, conflicting type of attitude that develops in my mind. Sometimes I think like, no, he is good for me. He's teaching so many things to me, so many new things to me. But at the other time, I am thinking like he is eating my own culture. I am not able to speak my own language. So जो ये conflicting and puzzling attitude है, This attitude is called ambivalence in Poco theory. In the words of Homi Bhabha, tomorrow we are going to study about Homi Bhabha. Before that, I am clearing all these terms. So Homi Bhabha has used this term ambivalence. ये term clear हो गया? What is ambivalence? So one day when I asked him to go back from my flat, he showed me gun. बंदूक निकाली उसने. तो मैं तो तुम्हें मार दूंगा. I'll shoot you. I'll not go from your house. Then I was forced to live with him. One day I realized that I am not able to speak Hindi properly. My language is also mixed with Bengali. I am addicted to use both the languages together. So a new type of language is being created. That is neither Hindi nor Bengali. A mixture of both. And when I speak in front of the people, people laugh at me. And Homi Bhabha called this language mimicry. तो स्टेज शो में होता है मिमिक्री करने वाले लोग पे लोग हंसते हैं. मिमिक्री मीन्स किसी की नकल उतारना. So when my language has become a mimicry, so it is all the effect of post-colonialism. Means the colonizer has changed my language, and my language has become a mimicry. Like if I talk about India, most of the people talk neither in Hindi nor in English. They talk in Hinglish, mixture of Hindi and English. So this is type of a mimicry. I hope mimicry is also clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next is I have my own space in my room, and when he came, he was having his own space. So the colonizer and the colonized, these are the two terms involved in post-colonialism. So जो colonized है, he is having the first space, क्योंकि वो उसका अपना घर है. So that house is called first space. When he came with his second space, a third space is created by mingling both the spaces, first and the third. Other example I can give. Every one of us is having a third space in our life. Why? Because most of us are working at home and also working at the offices, where the culture of both the places are completely different. And when a third space is created, when we speak the official language at our home or our informal language at the office, means both the things are mixed together. So post-colonial in literature includes the study of theory and literature as it relates to the colonizer and the colonized experience. एक colonizer होता है, एक colonized होता है. Post-colonial literature is the study of the effect of colonialism on cultures and the society. The main focus of post-colonial studies is on the culture of the colonized people and how their society has got changed because of the colonized. So if I talk about India, India is a colonized country. England was a colonizer.
Yes,
And England has colonized 292 countries. Only 22 countries are left in the entire world which was not colonized by England. So we study post-colonialism from the perspective of England's colonization. It represents that how first world countries, that is the European countries, they ruled and controlled the third world. And how these groups have since responded and resisted those encroachments. The next term is diaspora. These are the terms we need to understand to follow the next classes, because these terms will keep on coming. So diaspora means migration from home country to some other country, native homeland to some other country. That may be voluntarily or by forcefully. So that is called diaspora. And all those writers who have migrated from their own country, they are called diasporic writers, diasporic authors. So the best example is Salman Rushdie, Jhumpa Lahiri. These are called the diasporic writers because they are writing in England, leaving their own homeland. So diaspora literature is often concerned with questions of maintaining or altering the identity, because when they shift from their original homeland to some other land, तो क्या क्या changes होंगे? First change is identity. Because he is at the new place, he will lose his identity and he will look for identity. He will have the feeling of alienation. Then the next problem he will face of language. The new place is having a new language which is completely different from his original homeland. And the third thing is about the culture. So when we are focusing diasporic authors, we are mainly focusing on identity, language, and culture. The next is subaltern. Subaltern was also used by Antonio Gramsci. So it refers to the population that are socially, politically, and geographically outside of the hegemonic power structure of the colony. एक कॉलोनी में कुछ ऐसे लोग रहते हैं जो झुग्गी झोपड़ियों में रहते हैं. So they are socially, politically, and geographically backward, and they are outside of any political or social power. So we can say them oppressed people. So subaltern study is an intellectual discourse, or the concept of the subaltern is problematic because it originated as a Eurocentric method of historical inquiry. Yesterday we talked about the Eurocentric. So all these people who are the subaltern, they are dominated by the Eurocentric approach of the society. This term is also used in history, anthropology, sociology, and human geography. The subaltern is mainly studies about the oppressed people who are marginalized, who are not having any political, geographical, or social power. There is a famous book of Gayatri, Spivak, Can the Subaltern Speak? So that we will talk tomorrow about that book also. But before that, you must understand what is the meaning of subaltern. Clear?
Yes.
How this term has originated? A subaltern is primarily a British military term for a junior officer, literally meaning subordinate. Subaltern is used to describe commissioned officers below the rank of captain and generally comprises the various grades of lieutenant. Below captain, there is a lieutenant, and in the lieutenant, there are various grades. So those officers are called subaltern. If we talk in the perspective of India, Indian women, Dalits, rural, tribals, immigrant laborers are the part of subaltern. Within Punjab, India, the most oppressed are the rural folk and the illiterate women. So I hope the concept of subaltern is clear to all of you. The next is hybridity. As I said, that is of two traditions or two cultures to which create a new trans-cultural element and produce a double identity that contradicted as a colonizer and a colonized at the same time. In literature, it causes ambivalency. I also explained what is ambivalent and confusing, whether it is opposing or supporting colonialism, because for whatever the post-colonial text suppose to uncontaminated by the colonialist concepts. The best example I can give of hybridity in Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. When Robinson Crusoe shifted in the Iceland and he remains there for 28 years, there he finds local people. So one of the local people, he grabs him and he named him Friday. So there is another character, if you can remember, in Robinson Crusoe, his name is Friday.
Yes.
And Crusoe starts teaching him English. And he teaches him his own cultures. All the cultures are transferred by Rousseau to Friday. So Friday has become a colonized. And Robinson Crusoe is a colonizer. And Friday starts speaking language which is completely different from Crusoe. But that is also not his own language. So a new hybrid language is created. This is the third space, which is a mixture of first and the second. That is the space of colonizer and the colonized. That creates a third space. You can also take the example of children who are having the different culture and tradition at the home, and they are having the different culture and tradition at the school. So for them also a third space is created where they start behaving informal in the schools and formal behavior in the home. The next is ambivalence. The ambiguous way in which colonizer and colonized regard one another. The colonizer often regards the colonized as both inferior, yet exotically other, while the colonized regards the colonizer as both enviable and yet corrupt. Enviable भी है और corrupt भी है, अच्छा भी है और बुरा भी है. Colonizer क्या समझ रहा है? Colonized को inferior समझ रहा है. So in a context of hybridity, this often produces a mixed sense of blessing and curse. Mimicry. Mimicry is a colonial and post-colonial literature which is most commonly seen when members of colonized society imitate the language of the colonizer. जब colonizer के language को imitate करता है और इसका खुद का language change होके एक नया language create करता है, that language is called mimicry. So I'll go further in the same story. So one day, my friend who was living with me finally decided to go back from my home. And when he went back, I was not able to identify my own house. Everything has been changed. Even I myself was changed. But even though I still like my culture, I still like my surroundings, I still like my belongings. Now what happens when my friend went back to his own state, he met with his own friend who was an author, and he narrated my story to his friend, and his friend wrote a book about my culture, about my personality, about my belonging, about my nature. And that book got popularized. So the moment when he was with me, he was a colonizer. He was in power. He was having money. So in each and every aspect, he was dominating me. So what do you think when he would have narrated my story to his friend? Would it be my friendly or he would have shown his own superiority in the story while narrating.
Sir,
He will show his own superiority.
Yes, sir.
And when I read that book, I got devastated completely, because whatever was written was 100% wrong. My culture was shown an inferior culture. My personality was very right, very right. So this type of writing the books, sometimes it reaches to the schools and institutions, and the students read them and get information about that culture, about my culture. So by this way, the wrong things get popularized. Who was Hitler? What was his ideology? Who was Napoleon? What was his ideology? How we come to know? We only come to know through the books. Whatever is written is true. There are so many historical books related to England, related to India. So whatever is written is the final word. Those are the final things. So when India got independence in 1947 and British people went back, they started writing about the culture of India. And obviously, they would have shown their own supremacy. And when their book were published, those published books became universalized. It went in different countries, and the students started reading those books. And they realized that the culture of India is inferior. The people of India are low category people. They are behaving like a black. So, very famous post-colonial critic, Edward Said, came with the idea of Orientalism. So, what is Orientalism? Orientalism means Eastern view. There are two types of, he has divided the world into two categories, Eastern world and the Western world. Eastern means like Arab, Africa, means all those countries which were colonized by England. They comes under the Eastern part. And England, France, all these colonizers comes under Western. So when he wrote the book Orientalism, he said that the people who are writing about the Orientalists, the people who are writing about the Eastern countries, they are writing according to their own views, where they are showing their own supremacy. And they are showing the Orientals as inferior and lower culture. So this concept he called Orientalism. The people who are writing about Orientalists, the people who are writing about India, most of them have never visited India. कभी देखा ही नहीं इंडिया को. But they are writing just to hear from someone else. The way I told you the story of my friend. And those people has reached to the institutions and it has become universalized. So in today's class, we will study about Orientalism of Edward Said, Homi, Bhabha, and Gayatri, Spivak. These are the three main proponents
Orientalism का excuse me sir.
Yes,
इसका literal meaning क्या होगा Orientalism का?
Orientalism का मतलब हुआ कि जो ईस्टर्न पीपल हैं, लाइक इंडिया, इंडिया के बारे में वेस्टर्न के लोग लिखते हैं, और उसमें मोस्टली ऐसे होते हैं जो कभी इंडिया गए ही नहीं हैं, और जब वो हमारे बारे में लिखेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली अपनी बड़ाई करेंगे, इंडिया की थोड़ी ना बड़ाई करेंगे. द बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल इज वीएस नॉयपॉल का हमने एक बार सुना था, एन एरिया ऑफ डार्कनेस.
यस सर,
यस सर.
तो वीएस नॉयपॉल ने जब इंडिया को इन एरिया ऑफ डार्कनेस बताया, तो वो क्या था, एक ओरिएंटलिस्ट व्यू था. कुछ दिन आके इंडिया में रहने से वो इंडिया के कल्चर को सब कुछ नहीं जान सकता है. So obviously those people who are writing about us always they will show their own supremacy. अभी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि we are the dominated ones. We are very backward in writing. Indian literature is very backward. Superior कौन है? जो dominate कर रहा है. England is ruling in 292 countries. So whatever they will write, that will get popularized. They are in power. They are in supremacy. And they will teach the same thing in all the institutions because they are in power. And whatever they teach, that becomes the truth. So I hope the concept of Orientalism is clear. First of all, I start with Homi Bhabha. Homi K. Bhabha is the professor of English and American literature and language, and is also the director of humanities in the Harvard University. He is basically from India, but he is also a diasporic critic. He is an important figure in the post-colonial studies. अगर post-colonial का नाम आता है तो वहाँ होमी भाभा and एडवर्ड सेड जरूर रहेंगे. These are the two main proponents of post-colonialism. Even Homi Bhabha has taken all his ideas from Edward Said. Most of the time, Edward Said is known as the father of post-colonialism because of his single work, Orientalism, that was published in 1978. So Homi Bhabha developed his concepts like hybridity, mimicry, cultural difference, and ambivalence. In 2002, he received the Padma Bhushan Award in India in the field of education and literature. He is mostly influenced by the philosophy of Michel Foucault. And also he was influenced by Derrida and Lacan. When he came in India, he talked about the development of English in India and how English has captured the Indians in his essay, Science Taken for Wonders, where he discusses the discovery of English in colonial India. So this point is important. The concepts derived by Bhabha, one is hybridity. Who is going to explain what is? Is there anyone who will explain what is hybridity?
So mixing of cultures.
To language, to culture.
Language to culture.
No, there is a difference between language and culture. Don't mix these two things together.
Mixing of language is mimicry.
Yes, mixture of language is mimicry, and
Mimicry
mixture of
and
culture
mixing
is
of culture is
hybridity.
hybridity.
Okay, so don't mix these two things together. This idea has been taken from Edward Said's Orientalism. It appeared in The Location of Culture, which was published in 1994, and Edward Said's Orientalism was published in 1978. So he has taken most of his ideas from Edward Said. The next is ambivalence. As I said, that it's a confusing or ambivalent attitude of whether should I appreciate or shout at my colonizer. Same time, this word is also used for colonizer. Colonizer is also ambivalent. In one way, he thinks like colonized is inferior but profitable. So for both colonizer and colonized, this ambivalence has been used. The next is cultural difference, enunciation, and stereotype. Cultural difference sees culture as a point at which two or more cultures meet. It's not TOO, it's TWO. There is a typing mistake. So when there is a two cultures mixed together, so definitely there has to be a cultural difference. Enunciation. Enunciation is the act of utterance of mimicry. When I speak mimicry, it's not called a speak, it is called enunciation. Okay. And according to Bhabha, stereotyping is the knowledge and identification that oscillates between what is already known and something that is repeated. Stereotypes means the people who are coming in India as a colonizer, they keep repeating their supremacy again and again. They are superior, they are superior. Okay, thanks God, the power has come, so the class will continue.
So please explain again culture differences.
Okay, cultural difference means when two cultures mix together, one culture is of colonizer and the other culture is of colonized. Both are having different cultures. And when two cultures are mixed, hybridity comes. Hybridity, that is a new type of culture comes. So that is all the cultural difference. For a colonized, there is a cultural difference because he has lost his own culture. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Enunciation is clear. The next is called stereotyping. According to Bhabha, stereotyping means colonizers always appreciate their own rules, regulations, culture. Every time they keep on repeating their own culture. What is already known to a colonized, he gets addicted to listen those things and his mind is made up like that. And when they are using those things again and again, the people who are colonized, they become stereotyped. They become
culture, sir.
Fearful all the time. I'll give you one example. Suppose two people, one is very powerful and rich and one peasant farmer. They both go in one hotel and they take the dinner. During the dinner, both of them realize that they have lost their purse, means they have forgotten their purse, wallet. खाना खा लिया है, पर्स घर पे भूल गए दोनों. Now, how they behave? They will, both of them will behave differently. The one who is having money, who is rich and powerful, he will be quite different. He will behave in quite different way. He will say to waiter, call your manager. I want to talk to him. But जो फार्मर है, वो क्या बोलेगा, यार मैं लग रहा है मेरा पर्स कोई चोरी कर लिया है, रास्ते में किसी ने पॉकेट मार लिया है. Both of them will behave differently. तो जो पीजेंट है, वो फार्मर है, वो क्या स्टीरियोटाइप्ड हो गया है, उसका माइंड जो है उसकी तरफ से सेट हो गया है, उसकी बिलीफ बन गई है. So according to Bhabha, stereotyping is knowledge and identification that oscillates between what is already known and something that is repeated. So जो dominated है, he is already having a preconceived idea that I am a dominated one, I am a colonized one, and apart from that, he is again and again and again receiving those predominating messages by the colonizer. So stereotyping was used by the colonizers because it creates an identity of colonizer, not colonized. So that is the reason he is repeating his own cultures again and again. So it creates an identity with a large group of people, whether it is correct or not. जो भी वो बोल रहा है अपने कल्चर के बारे में, वो गलत भी हो सकता है, सही भी हो सकता है, but to prove his superiority, to prove his majority, he will speak again and again to everyone. I hope stereotyping is clear.
Yes.
अपने ही कल्चर को बढ़ा चढ़ा के बोलना by the colonizer. The next was mimicry. And the third space. Real space or physical space where the colonized lives is called the first space. When the colonizer comes and he occupies the space of the colonized, he is actually having a virtual space. वो उसी के स्पेस में रह रहा है. That is the reason it is called the virtual space. और फिर जो नया स्पेस क्रिएट होता है दोनों को मिक्स करके, that is called the third space. तो colonizer का क्या है? Second space. Colonized का first space. और जो दोनों का मिक्स हुआ then is called the third space or hybrid space. Third space acts as an ambiguous area that develops when two or more individuals or cultures interact together. It challenges our sense of the historical identity of culture as homogenizing, unifying force authenticated by ordinary past kept alive in the national tradition of people. So these are the major concepts of Homi Bhabha. Now we look at the major works of Bhabha. Some of the major works you must remember: Nation and Narration, very famous work. Nation and Narration, published by 1990. This work was influenced by Michel Foucault. The Location of Culture. This was influenced by Edward Said's Orientalism. So it was published in 1994. Edward Said, Continuing the Conversation, published in 2005. Democracy Derealized on Writing Rights. And he also wrote a biography of V.S. Naipaul in 2001. So this was all about the concepts and the ideas of Homi Bhabha. But he was completely influenced by Edward Said. Edward Said means godfather of post-colonialism. His ideas are really miraculous. By birth, he was Palestinian. He got educated in Palestine, Egypt, and United States. Presently, he is a professor of English of comparative literature in the Columbia University, New York, USA. The first book that Edward Said published was Joseph Conrad and the Fiction of Autobiography. This was the first book of Edward Said, published in 1966. As a cultural critic, Edward Said is mostly known for the book Orientalism. Edward Said का नाम जहाँ आता है वहाँ Orientalism जरूर आता है. It's a critical analysis of culturally inaccurate representation that are basis of Orientalism or the Western study of the Eastern culture. Orientalism is the Western study of the Eastern culture. The people who are from the Western countries, when they study about the Eastern culture, it is called Orientalism. The autobiography Out of Place, which was published in 1999, was bestowed 3 awards in 1999. New Yorker's Book Award for Nonfiction in 2000, Enfield Wolf Book Award for Nonfiction, and Morton Down Label Award in Literature. So his autobiography is again very famous, Out of Place. He also wrote a sequel of Orientalism, again very famous work, Culture and Imperialism. There is a difference between hegemony and imperialism. Hegemony में क्या था? जो user है, he is giving a consent to dominate. Opposite to this is imperialism, where force is used to get the work done, to make you accept forcefully. That may be economic force, that may be a physical force, that may be a societal force. Culture and Imperialism is again a collection of essays by Edward Said, published in 1993. Culture and Imperialism, which is the sequel of Orientalism. So there may be again a question which is the sequel of Orientalism, culture and imperialism. So in this work, he is attempting to trace the connection between imperialism and culture in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. He also used the term late style for the aesthetics that develops when an artist knows that they have made it career-wise. Their reputation is secure and they can relax enough to permit themselves to experiment. Aesthetics is all about the pleasure that we get. So this word late style has been used for the aesthetics, for the artist. जब artist को लगता है कि मैंने अपना reputation काफी बना लिया है, and this reputation is enough to survive. So for that aesthetic pleasure, he has used the term late style. His book Orientalism is elaborated from Antonio Gramsci's hegemony and Michel Foucault's theory of discourse and relationship between knowledge and power. So we can say that he was too much influenced by Michel Foucault and Antonio Gramsci. और ये जो हेजीमनी है, हेजीमनी का ही कॉपी उसने किया और इंपीरियलिज्म बनाया. Countered structuralist and post-structuralist, and he disliked both the theories. Structuralism and post-structuralism was completely disliked by him. Repeated. He said that Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe best represents the post-colonial impact in a fiction. We can see many novels or plays having the post-colonial influence. One is Robinson Crusoe. The other is Shakespeare's The Tempest. Next is Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. Another one is by Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. Likewise, there are so many works which represents the post-colonialism. Let's see about the Orientalism. This is a very famous and huge work, so we will discuss this work in detail. Orientalism is a 1978 book by Edward Said in which he developed the idea of Orientalism to define the West's historically patronizing representation of the East, the societies and people who inhabit the places of Asia, North Africa, and the Middle East. These are the people called Orientalists, the people who belongs to East, Asia, North Africa, and the Middle East. These places are called Orientalists. So Said argued that Orientalism, in the sense of the Western scholarship about the Eastern world, is inextricably tied to the imperialist societies who produce it, which makes much Orientalists' work inherently political and servile to power. All those people who are Occidental, they became Orientalists by writing about the Orientals. Orientalism का मतलब writing about the Orientalists. So that becomes Orientalism. And he brought imperialism. Imperialism is a policy or ideology of extending a country's rule over foreign nations, often by military force or by gaining political and economic control of other areas. This is the thing I wanted to explain, that imperialism is exactly opposite of hegemony. I hope these two terms are clear to you, imperialism and hegemony.
Yes, sir.
कहीं भी डाउट हो किसी भी सेंटेंस में, काइंडली स्टॉप मी एंड आस्क. Traditionally, any form of a scholarship or fascination with the Orient, countries like Middle East, encompassing North Africa, Turkey, Pakistan, India, these are all the part of Orientalism. Edward Said's books transformed the term Orientalism from a relatively neutral, though obviously biased, name for a vulnerable field of study into an indictment of bigotry and racism. So, Orientalism was used by him to create a racist culture. In Orientalism, what was the contribution of Edward Said? Edward Said worked emptied Orientalism of its positive association and put it in their place a long list of charges. This long list of charges were against the Occidentalists. These charges were against the British people who were writing for India. His basic charge is that Orients, perceived by the Orientalists, primarily not exclusively English, French, Germans, so is a fiction of their own imagination. If the Europeans are writing any fiction, it is of their own imagination, bearing no resemblance to the reality of the Orientals, as most of them have never visited Orient, but based their views on the second-hand account of it. उन्होंने जो भी वर्क लिखा किसी और के मुंह से सुना और फिर वो लिख दिया और वो ऑथेंटिक बन गया और वो स्कूल कॉलेजों में पढ़ाया जाने लगा, स्टूडेंट्स उसको पढ़ने लगे एंड दे रियलाइज यार इंडिया का कल्चर तो बहुत ही घटिया था. So this was the charge applied by Edward Said. The West understands the Orient as backward, unenlightened, irrational, sexually deviant, unhealthy, uninviting, and so on. And it forms its politics accordingly. So all those people who will read those books will perceive the same type of mentality. Whatever is written in the book, they will get that knowledge. The best example I'll give is the Passage of India. All of you have gone through Passage of India by E.M. Forster. Who is the protagonist?
Dr. Aziz.
Dr. Aziz.
Dr.
In the beginning of the novel itself, Dr. Aziz is called by two white people to meet him. But when he reaches there, he finds that they have left. Can you recall this event?
Yes, sir.
So this is the best example where Indians were completely ignored by the British people.
Yes, sir.
So this Passage to India was written by E.M. Forster when he made two visits to India. The first visit was made in 1912 and the second visit was made in 1921. So he just made a visit and he wrote novels about India. So that is also a type of Orientalism. Then there is also an incident of hallucination. Hallucination by the female protagonist. What is her name?
Adela Quested, sir.
Adela Quested. Very right. So Adela Quested is having lots of hallucination and Dr. Aziz is blamed for raping her. So again, so post-colonial says that why?
False.
Pardon? Post-colonialist says that why E.M. Forster has blamed Dr. Aziz for that rape. In place of Dr. Aziz, some Britishers could be there. Why Indian? So again, this is all to defame our culture. If any outsiders are writing about our culture, it's just to defame. Because no one else can appreciate our own culture. There is propaganda what Edward Said says, that this is a type of propaganda. So he said that West or the Westerns painted an unworthy picture of the Oriental nations as a propaganda in order to impose its superiority and to colonize them in various ways. Sniffing the crisis, he exposes the hypocrisy of the Western countries. And he gave a very famous quotation where he says that Orientalism assumed an unchanging Orient, absolutely different from the West. There is again a comment of David Lodge, who is a postmodern writer. Is there any issue with the voice? Or am I audible?
No, sir.
No, sir. Yes, sir.
No,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Let me continue. So David Lodge says that Orientalism is the discourse of the West about the East. It concerned to show how this course is self-validating, constructing some stereotypes which becomes accepted as self-evident facts. There are many books written on Orientalism. So again, there is a repetition that Orientalism is the Western style for dominating and restructuring and having the authority over the West. Sorry, authority over the East. Again, there is a typing mistake. So Orientalists, when they write, they always write in a dominating manner that becomes an authority, and that authority restructures our own culture in the view of the reader. So the notion of Orientalism is based on travel books and guidebooks. When those Occidentalists, Europeans, travel India or travel Eastern countries, they write travelogues, travel books or guidebooks, which expresses the opinion on or paint the imaginative pictures contemplated by authors. The picture painted by the Orientalist is not based on the ground reality. Ground reality is only perceived by the inhabitant. अगर मैं किताब लिखूंगा तो उसमें मैं अपनी बढ़ाई करूंगा, अगर दूसरे के बारे में लिखूंगा तो मैं उसकी शिकायत करूंगा. So the idea is that the people, places and experiences can always be described by the book. So much so that a book acquires a great authority and use even than the actuality or reality is different. And whatever is written in the book becomes an authority for the reader. The reader are influenced by what they read in the books. Their experiences are determined by what they have read. Because reader has never gone and seen the reality, that what is the reality. Whatever Napoleon or Lespace was a French engineer, so whatever they knew and whatever they did, only that thing comes from the book. Any historical event, we only know through the medium of books. So it is very important to know that who has written the book. Is it belong to the same culture who has written the book? Or is it an Orientalist book? So this makes a huge difference. So Orientalism stands for a tradition. It's not a reality. Exploitation of the Oriental silence. In want of speaking the reality, such as an Orient was silent. Again, Edward Said said that why Orients are silent. Agar Europeans or Occidentals are writing so many books that you are inferior, and these people are silent. So why they are silent? So he says that in want of a speaking reality such as in Orient was silent, Europeans formed projects like railways project, language implementation projects involving the native Orient, but they were not responsible to them. इंग्लैंड ने क्या किया, अपने लैंग्वेज को इंडिया में एस्टैब्लिश करने के लिए दे ब्रॉट अ न्यू एजुकेशनल पॉलिसी इन द ईयर 1835, पॉलिसी ऑफ लॉर्ड मैकाले, and that policy was just based on to teach the Indian students the superiority of England. Why today the poem of Wordsworth that is called Why We Wander Lonely as a Cloud, that is also called Daffodils. So when you are teaching daffodils in the class of Indian students, how the student will perceive that flower that does not exist in our culture? We have never seen daffodils. How we will perceive that flower? And what is
very true, sir.
Yes, please.
Very true, sir. You just touched the nerves of mine. I felt a lot of problem understanding when I studied Westland.
Yes.
I could not recognize the things what he is talking about. And if you talk about Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, then I will be able to understand. Okay, he is talking about some knowledgeable places.
Yes, very right. So why there is a need to read all these Canterbury Tales, Wasteland? Why should we read like that? We are Indians. We should read about our own culture. What is the need to read all this world literature? So this is called exploitation. Exploiting the silence was their way of showing cultural supremacy. On the basis of their superior military power, they dominated the Orient, subdued it, and defeated it. Orientalism metamorphosed itself from a scholarly discourse to an imperial institution. Everything was imperialized. Forcefully, it was given that you have to accept it. And when it was accepted by us, then they took it for granted. And that became an authority. You have accepted it. So its heydays produced scholars, authors, translators, students, linguists, romantics, and mystics. The die-hard Orientalists failed to take notice of the changing international scenarios. They believed that Orient never changed and remained same. When they wrote the book, and the readers who are reading the book, they think like the Indians will remain same. They are uncultured and they will remain uncultured. Because after that, nobody has written that India has got changed, the culture has improved. There is no one to write like that. So whatever once written is finalized. So there is a need for a new assessment. तो एक बार फिर से आके हमें देखो कि हम बदल गए हैं और फिर से लिखो हमारे बारे में. So Edward Said asserts that the Orient should be reassessed on the basis of Asian and Arab situations. Orientalists think about the Western races superior and more enlightened, hence are capable of exploiting and subjugating the Asian nations. So he is talking about the reassessment, and at the in the last chapter he says that even the Orientalists come for the reassessment, again they are going to talk about their own superiority. So it is only possible to write about the originality by the sub-origins or the inhabitants. If we have to talk about the culture of India, Indians should write about their own culture, not the Orientalists. Then only this problem is going to be solved. But for that, the country has to be powerful enough so that these books can go in each and every corner of the world. So the people who have got a preconceived notion of inferiority, they get a new insight. I hope Orientalism is all clear to all of you.
Yes.
So next we are going to talk about Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, Bengali women. I think she must be the neighbor of Monomita.
यस सर इंग्लैंड जाऊंगी तो उन्हीं के पास रहूंगी उन्हीं के घर में
Okay, so Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, actually she was Gayatri Chakravarti when she married in England, then she took the title Spivak. She was born in Calcutta in 1942 and she is a university professor in Columbia University. In March 2007, she became a university professor at Columbia University, making her first woman of color to achieve the highest faculty rank in universities of 264 years of history. इसके पहले कोई इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटी का प्रोफेसर नहीं बना था in Columbia. She is best known for the essay "Can the Subaltern Speak?" This is the essay which made her worldwide famous. She considered an influential intellectual of post-colonialism and also for a translation and an introduction of Jacques Derrida's De la Grammatologia. She translated the work of Jacques Derrida into from French into English, that is of grammatology, which is the base of deconstruction. She has also received the Padma Bhushan Award in 2013. She has written a book called A Critic of Post-Colonial Reason that was published in 1999. It explores how major works of European metaphysics, like written by Immanuel Kant and Hegel, they not only tend to exclude the subaltern from their discussion, but actively prevent non-Europeans from occupying position as a fully human subject. Yesterday I explained the meaning of subaltern. Subaltern are those oppressed people who are away from the political and economical approach of the society. Some important works by Spivak. In other words, Essay in Cultural Politics. Can the Subaltern Speak? 1988. The year of publication of this essay is very, very important. A Critic of Post-Colonial Reason Towards a History of the Vanishing Present. Death of Discipline. This is again, this question was asked in one of the exam. Discipline and Punish and Death of a Discipline. These two questions were asked. Discipline and Punish is by
Russian writer.
Discipline and Punish.
Birth of Reason.
Birth of Reason, very right. Author name?
Levi-Strauss.
Michael Foucault.
Michael Foucault, sir.
Michel Foucault, very right.
Oh, yeah.
This is the reformation of the 18th century prison. That has been taken from the Jeremy Bentham Panopticon.
Yes, sir, yes.
And this Death of a Discipline by Gayatri Spivak. Other ASEAN was written in 2005. An Aesthetic Education in the Era of Globalization in 2012. The Red Thread, which is yet to be published, but part of this was published in a journal in which she described the title of her next coming book. Red Thread. The concepts of Spivak, one is subaltern. Critical theory in post-colonialism, subaltern refers to the population that are socially, politically outside of the hegemonic power structure of the colony and of the colonial homeland, and also who are economically disposed. इसमें दो तरह के लोग आते हैं. पहली कैटेगरी के लोग वो हैं who are not any power to vote, power to establish their identity in the society. So they are apart, they were away from the colony. किसी एक colony का part नहीं है वो. Like barbarians. Adivasi. And the second category, the people who are economically disposed. In describing history told from below, the term subaltern is derived from Antonio Gramsci's work, Cultural Hegemony. The subaltern has also come from Antonio Gramsci's Cultural Hegemony. In Edward Said, we saw that Orientalism was also taken from Michel Foucault's Discourse, Theory of Discourse, and Antonio Gramsci's Cultural Hegemony. The subaltern has been also taken from the same work. Spivak said that women are also subaltern because they are economically disposed. The second concept that was given by Spivak is strategic essentialism. This was introduced in 1980. Let's see what this concept says. It refers to a strategy. From the title itself, it is clear, strategic essentialism. So it is a strategy. First, let me explain in a layman language. As is talking about the subaltern people who are economically, historically, and geographically disposed, तो उनको करना क्या चाहिए? क्या वो पूरी लाइफ में ऐसे ही रहेंगे? No, she says that they should create a strategy. उन्हें एक strategy बनानी चाहिए. That should be an essential strategy. And they should revolt. They should join together and they should revolt for their rights. That we call strategic essentialism. So it says that it refers to a strategy that nationalities, ethnic groups, or minority groups can use to present themselves, while the strong differences may exist between the members of these groups. And among themselves, they engage in continuous debate. When these people are going to join together, among themselves, there may be some people who will speak against them. उन्हीं में से कोई निकल के बोलेगा नहीं, हमें तो नहीं जाना है, हमें लड़ाई नहीं करनी है. So it is sometimes advantageous for them to temporarily essentialize themselves and to bring forward their group identity in a simplified way to achieve certain goal or to oppose the leveling impact of global culture. Definitely, if they are going to establish their identity, it will be an advantage for them. So the idea also comes up regularly in queer theory, feminist theory, means जो queer theory that talks about the transgenders. So she is talking about ये जो कैटेगरी है, हर एक कैटेगरी में जो लोग हैं उन सबको they should all join together, they should make a strategy and they should shout for their right. में कौन कौन सी कैटेगरी है? Queer theory, which talks about the transgenders, feminist theory about the women, deep studies, and specifically in the works of Louis Irigaray, French philosopher, who refers to it as mimesis epistemological performance. लुइस इरिग्रे ने इसको एक टर्म दिया है. देन देयर इज अ स्ट्रेटेजिक एसेंशियलिज्म का ही नाम बदल के उसने रखा मिमेसिस एपिस्टेमोलॉजिकल परफॉर्मेंस, व्हिच इज शाउट बाय द डिफ पीपल. जितने बहरे लोग हैं इस दुनिया में, अगर वो सभी प्रोटेस्ट करें अपने राइट के लिए, so that term is called mimesis epistemological performance by Louis Irigaray. So these are the two concepts. I hope it is clear: strategic essentialism and subaltern. Should I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Next, I am going to talk about her very famous essay, Can the Subaltern Speak?, published in 1988. This term subaltern was coined by Antonio Gramsci in his book Cultural Hegemony. It means the population which are socially, politically, and geographically outside of the hegemonic power structure of the colony and colonial homeland. So this essay that was published in 1988, Spivak relates to the manner in which Western cultures investigate the other culture. The same thing we found in Orientalism, that they are also investigating from their own point of view. So she also says that the subalterns are also judged by the Western. Spivak uses the example of Indian sati practice of widow's suicide. That when an Indian lady becomes a widow, she goes for self-burning. Sati practice. Spivak used the character Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri. This is one fictional character that she has used to describe the sati practice in India. So she described through Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri the humiliation of women through self-immolation or sati practice in the post-colonial period. And that's the reason why she called Indian women as subaltern. So this essay critically deals with an array of Western writers starting from Karl Marx, Foucault, Deleuze, and Derrida. All these writers are critically assessed by Gayatri Spivak. And for doing an assessment, she translated the work of Derrida. The basic claim and opening statement of Can the Subaltern Speak is that Western academic thinking is produced in order to support the Western economical interest. जैसा हमने Orientalism में पढ़ा, so Western academic thinking is produced in order to support Western interest, not our interest. Whatever they had written, that is written for their own interest. Spivak holds that knowledge is never innocent and that it expresses the interest of its producer. Knowledge jahan bhi hai, that is there to express the interest of its producer. Jo knowledge produce karega, that will be benefited for him. So for Spivak, knowledge is like any other commodity that is exported from the West to the third world. Knowledge को एक commodity की तरह बताया है. So that is like a commodity which is being exported by the Western people to other parts of the world for financial and other types of gain. So at the end of the essay, there is a description. Your title was Can the Subaltern Speak? You are asking a question in the title. Can the subaltern speak? Means, can those people speak for their rights? Those who are oppressed and backward. So you have to reply at the end. Can they speak or they cannot speak? So at the end of the essay, he says that subalterns cannot speak. According to her, as soon as the subaltern tries to acquire a voice, they must move into a dominant discourse to be understood. जैसे वो बोलने के काबिल होते हैं, they move to a different type of discourse that is called a dominant discourse. अब dominant discourse वो कब बनेंगे? जब वो अपना origin छोड़ेंगे and they join with some dominant people. So therefore they must remove themselves from the subaltern position, which also means that they are no longer speaking from that position. And since there is no way to get out of the cycle, Spivak concludes that subaltern is a silent position. One cannot speak from a subaltern position. उसको बोलने के लिए किसी dominant का सहारा लेना पड़ेगा, उसके पास जाना पड़ेगा, and once he becomes dominant, he will not speak in the voice of the subaltern. I hope Gayatri Spivak's terms are clear to all of you.
sir.
Yes, sir.
There is another term called neo-colonialism, which is also related to colonialism. So neo-colonialism is the practice of using capitalism, globalization, cultural imperialism, and conditional aid to influence a developing country instead of the previous colonial methods of direct military control. So neo-colonialism, जैसे हमने पहले बाकी थियरीज में देखा था कि जैसे जैसे थियरी आ रही थी पीछे की थियरीज में मिक्स होती जा रही थी. So neo-colonialism is also the mixture of all the theories that are infused in colonialism. Colonialism में सारी theory को mix कर दिया and that it has become neo-colonialism. So it is a practice of using capitalism. Capitalism हमने कहाँ देखा था? Marxism में. So Marxism is mixed. Globalization, cultural imperialism, cultural hegemony जो हमने पढ़ा था, they all are mixed. So this term was coined by French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre in 1956, but it was first used by Kwame Nkrumah. He was the first prime minister of Ghana. And this term was used in the context of African countries who were going under decolonization in the 1960s, who were on the verge of independence. So this point is again very clear. This was coined by Jean-Paul Sartre, but he has not used this term. So it was first used by Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first prime minister of Ghana. So neo-colonialism is also discussed in the words of Western thinkers such as Jean-Paul Sartre in his book Colonialism and Neo-Colonialism. This was only the title that appeared in his book. And Noam Chomsky, The Washington Connection and the Third World Fascism. So these are the two books where these words have appeared. Till now, we have been discussing about the colonialism of India. What about the other countries? The most affected continent of colonialism was Africa. And to express their position, they started a movement that is called a Negritude movement. So Negritude was founded by the French poet. There were three association of three people. One is Aimé Césaire, Leopold Senghor, and Leon Damas. They were the African poets, but living in France, living very important, and you must note down these names because this has been asked in various exams. The Muse of History by African writer Derek Walcott. White Mythologies is again about the racism by Robert Young. The Shock of Arrival, that is a reflection on post-colonial experience by Mina Alexander. She is a writer from USA. Post-colonial Theory and Introduction by Leela Gandhi. She is an Indian post-colonial writer. A Critical Psychology of the Post-Colonial, The Mind of Apartheid by Derek Hook. Post-Colonial Studies, A Materialistic Critique by Benita Parry. This is another very famous book. Colonialism, Post-Colonialism by Anya Lumba. Masks of Conquest, A Literary Study and a British Rule in India by Gauri Vishwanathan.